Hello, my name's Ralph. I am a grateful adult child. This is an incredible honor. I have a passion for recovery. I have a passion for the solution and the promises becoming part of our lives. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about my story, but also about what I believe is about raising the bar for our lives, expecting the best and getting it, and how that's impacted my life. And so I wanted to share that. I'm fortunate to be in a very healthy group in Shillington. It's a 3-year-old group, and we have a lot of newcomers come in, and they come from a facility, a pretty renowned facility, and that facility believes enough in our program to handpick those people while they're in rehab to bring them to us. Louder? Okay. Better? Okay. Really? Okay. All right. Okay. Like that? All right. But anyways, so I get the experience every week. Newcomers come in and have that glimpse of hope. Seeing what the program could give them, the possibilities for their lives. And that's my hope and my prayer, my desire for this short little talk, to give you that hope of what I believe the Red Book promises us, and something that we can have in our lives. So I'm only going to read one little section of the Red Book, but for me the Red Book is a book I believe we can all put our name on there. It's our book. And for my story, this section really says my life, who I am, my true self. But I'm asking for you to consider this because it says we. So this isn't just about Ralph, it's about all of us. And sometimes there's topics that make people cringe. Sometimes there's topics that make people want to throw things. So I'm warning you, this is one of those. This is about love and self-love and intimacy. So I just ask you don't throw things if it's uncomfortable. I just ask you to consider the possibility of this for your life. So from the Red Book, on page 289, it's from chapter 7, and I would just like a moment for us to just close our eyes, breathe deeply, and I would like you to listen to these words and consider this for you, as I have been blessed with this in my life. By loving ourselves, we can begin to take down our final wall and let love in. This is the core of the onion, self-love. Letting someone in takes courage because we have been hurt deeply by rejection as children. We loved our parents naturally, but our parents could not accept our gift. They did not love themselves. They could not recognize what we were trying to give them. As children, we were confused by our parents' rejection. We quickly learned to retract our love and bury it deep inside. We created a false self who chased people and things so we could feel in control but never whole. We thought we had buried our love permanently, but it is there. No matter what we have done in the false self, our love is there. Now, this means we can love others. This means we can be a friend. By loving ourselves, we see there is more love in the world than we realized. There is still much dependency and addiction, but there is love, and we can see it. We recognize it because it is in us. By recognizing love, our false self dissolves. We realize we are not our addictions. We are not drugs, food, spending, gambling, sex, or compulsions. We are love. I'm one of those different kind of men, which I guess is considered emotional and, God forbid, romantic. And so I have always been different. I came into a family, and my family could not receive my heart, my open heart. But thanks to the grace of God, thanks to the strength of love, I never gave up on my heart. I never gave up on bringing my heart and opening myself up. No matter how many times I was hurt and misunderstood. My family was a functional alcoholic family. My family was a family that was looking good, and I had no idea that my family was as dysfunctional or disturbed till well into my life. And I bought into the magical thinking. I bought into the fact that we were a good family, and all the destructive things were not talked about. I was an emotional child. I was told I was a baby. I was told I was oversensitive and that I was a sissy. So I learned, as most adult children, to stop feeling and to stop talking. And I went through most of my life an orphan, even though I did have parents. They never talked to me about the trauma going on. They never helped me understand the adult things that were happening. And so I managed through life, and I became a people pleaser. I became a fixer. I was the oldest child. I was the first grandchild. So for a brief amount of time, I was the only game in town. And so the few early years, there was a lot of happy pictures I saw where they did, I guess, fuss over me. But my family also had the ability to drop you like a hot potato. So as soon as the next baby came, you were done. And so in my family, I had a younger sister and a younger brother. And then coincidentally, as my parents started to, their life started to disintegrate from a promiscuous father and a codependent mother, I was then told from my story with my therapist that my personality fractured, my soul wound occurred the night when it was announced my father was running away with my aunt, and all the flirtations and all the inappropriateness that my mother would somehow send me along, like I would be a chaperone. And so my trauma was watching this go on. And so I could feel a lot of that, but I still don't have a lot of memory. But I have learned that our bodies do keep score, and that it's okay for me to just know that that was traumatic and it was abusive. And so it also helps me understand why I was so vulnerable. My abuse occurred a lot because I had a lot of female cousins. I had younger aunts, and again, little Ralphie bringing his heart and wanting to care about people. Many times when I would do that with my cousins, they would always find a way to get me somewhere in the house and then start some sexual responses. And so I would usually freeze up. I also had an aunt that exposed herself, had a neighbor lady that liked to expose herself. And all of that was just me continually not being able to understand what was happening. And of course the shame of carrying it was my fault because it kept happening. And so I went through my teenage years again dating and bringing my heart, not like my friends, just wanting to have sex, but I actually wanted to love someone. So I didn't get rewarded from my friends. I got pretty much put down and made fun of. And then, unfortunately, the girls I dated didn't reward me either because they said I didn't do enough or I didn't try anything. And so I was really, it was really difficult for me to understand that I was, this was my heart and this is what I believed in, and I wasn't going to compromise myself. And I continued then to date, and I found another girl who was in a looking good family, and she told me about her boyfriend before and how abusive he was and how he did all these terrible things. And of course it makes sense to me now, but I didn't understand then. And of course then I fell in love with her and I treated her so wonderfully, and then she shattered my heart by telling me one night eating pizza that she was going back to the abusive boyfriend. And so I had brought my heart, I had brought my best, and once again shattered. But I had this resiliency, I guess. Then, with a broken heart, I met my wife-to-be in a blind date. And expecting the worst, she got in the car, and I remember how beautiful she looked, and yet something felt comfortable. And I didn't wrestle with her. I didn't try to get what I could. I just talked to her. And for the first time in a long time, I felt comfortable. I didn't have to be anybody else. And so I fell in love with this young lady named Evie, and didn't know her abuse, didn't know her wounds or her damage. But she knew that I cared about her. And so somehow, some way, we fell in love and we married. We were both adult children, we were both untreated, and we were both very wounded. But somehow we stayed together. And I had to learn about depression. I had to learn about pill addiction. I had to learn about all the trauma, the incest that was going on in her family. But my heart kept believing, and I stayed. I didn't run. My fear told me to run, but I didn't. Love was more powerful than my fear. And so I loved her. I loved her through all of that. But her wounds were so deep. And she would tell me these wonderful things about how I had changed her life and how I was the best thing in her life. But then when I would tell to her how I felt, her wounds and her self-esteem were so low. And she would just say these terrible things about herself. And that was our dance. And that was our dance for so long. And we had children, and the children seemed to be something she could really feel good about. And so, but as life went on, I learned more about her abuse. I learned more about her struggles. And I loved her. through life, and I kept believing that somehow I could find a way to understand and be supportive. And my heart would go out and I would cry out to God. And I grew up with a higher power who was somebody I visited a couple times a year, and yet my low point, when I didn't know if I could do it anymore, I decided to find the God of my understanding and the Lord of my understanding. And I went back to the book and I started to read, and I realized I was reading about someone who was with broken people, someone who treated women so tenderly, and someone who loved unconditionally. And I said, that's who I can follow. That's who I can be like. That's who I can pray to give me the right heart. Because there were times when it was so overwhelming. It was so painful. And yet, as life went on and we went farther and farther, people started to notice. People started to notice that I was keeping my promise to her, and I was keeping my my hope that someday she would get through the depression, and someday she would find some relief, and that someday we would just have this life together. Because of course both families kept pouring more and more stuff into our lives, and being codependent and her having such a big heart, they just took, and eventually her depression got so bad and so crippling, and then of course her desire to live was gone, and so there was the suicide attempts. And yet I learned to understand them. I learned to understand her pain. And I stood by. And I kept praying. I kept praying and praying to give me the right heart and understanding. And I was able, until, she passed, to care for her. The last 10 years I was more a caretaker than a husband. But I still held out that hope. I still held out that hope that someday we would have all these opportunities to be a couple and to be to share life together without all this weight. And when she passed, I knew I had honored her and stayed with her. But then my prayer was, Lord, I know you've taught me an awful lot. You've taught me so much of how to be a partner and how to stay there. I know you don't want me to be alone. I know that you want me to share this with someone again. So that was my prayer. My prayer was to bring someone into my life, to give them all that he had taught me, all those painful moments, all those times of growth. And at that point I went back into this program, as I had been in years ago, but I was in it in my head. I went back with my heart, and I started to do everything I could for me. I started to learn how not to be a people pleaser. I started to learn how to have a voice. I started to learn how to love myself and to believe that there was another way to live, and that somehow I could find someone who would be healthy and able to love themselves and be able to walk with me in a healthy, loving relationship. And the more I did the work, and as the years went by, I went to a meeting, and the second part of my life, I heard this lady say it was her first meeting, and that she had come heartbroken, and she knew she had a right to love and be loved. And my heart heard that. And as time went on, we shared our struggles, we shared our griefs. And I realized that she hadn't given up on love, and even though she was walked away from and devastated, she also believed in love. And so we kept working the program. And after a while, we started telling each other our stories. And after a while, the things that were so wounding to me, I had a voice and I could tell her about them. One of the things that was so wounding to me with Evie was I understand now. She was neglected, she was abused, so attention was something she needed. And sometimes the flirting that went on was very harmful and wounding to me. And I couldn't really do anything about it then. And I know as Kathleen was attractive also that there was people flirting with her. And I remember bringing to her my wound. And she knew my story. And I said, I don't know what we can do. I said, but if there's some way for that not to happen. And then we talked some more and we realized we both had empty cups. And when we have empty cups, I also like the attention throughout the years. And but we realized we were starting to fill our own cups. That we came to ACA with empty cups, and our work and our program started to fill our cups. And we began to take care of ourselves, and we began to ask for what we needed, and we began to put boundaries down that helped us protect ourselves. And all those old wounds, all those fears, would Kathleen do what other people have done? And our conversations of opening ourselves up and being honest and transparent and understanding that I didn't want our relationship to be burdened with what happened before. And could I possibly, as that reading, could I possibly open myself up again and hope for the best? Expect the best, expect something better, expect what the promises offer. Could it be different this time? And she had the same story. She had the same concerns and the same fears. And yet, as we talked, as we opened, as we were honest, as we were transparent, as we had a voice, I told her what I needed. She told me what she needed. I didn't mind read anymore. I didn't sit there and expect her to do things. We just became genuine and honest and transparent. And so I took her to where I grew up in Niagara Falls, and I proposed. Because of the romantic I am, of course it had to be on the tower overlooking the falls. She was overwhelmed. I proposed. I got down on one knee, and she said yes. And of course, we had a ways to go. You know, she still had her children. Mine were grown, but her children were still with her, and there was still an ex-father, an ex that was still in the mix, and so we wanted to be considerate of the kids, so we had to wait. We had to wait for a while, and then we started to talk about getting married. And so once we told the kids, and she said to me, well, when would you like to get married? I said, are you letting me choose? She said, yes. I said, well, of course it's got to be Valentine's Day. Of course. So it was a Tuesday, and it was just a couple months ago, but we made it work on a Tuesday. And then she said, "What about the honeymoon?" I said, "Well, it's obvious. The final piece has to be Hawaii. We're going to Hawaii." And we just sort of looked at each other and said, 3 years ago, we were in so much pain. We had so much weight hanging on us. And yet, this is our life now. And I was able to sit on the beach in Maui with her and take in the beauty. Because of the work I had done. All the noise, all the people in my life I had to fix weren't there anymore. It was just the two of us. It wasn't 15 people there. And we could walk the volcanoes together, and we could hike, and we could swim in that water. And we realized that the promises had come true. But then we said, so many people read romance novels, and so many people go to movies and look at romance. And our heart's desire was to say, but everybody can have that. And as the Red Book told us, we were put into this world with that in us. And unfortunately, our families couldn't understand the beauty of what we brought from our hearts. But it tells us that it's still there, no matter how much we've been hurt, no matter how much we think we can't do it. And so this program, to me, is also about, again, believing that we are capable of love. We can love, and we can let someone in when we protect ourselves and when we have healthy boundaries. And when we look at the promises, every one of those promises, I believe, is about a healthy relationship. You make better choices. You put up boundaries. You expect the best. You stop people pleasing. You become attracted to people who are able to love and give love. Instead of the familiar of going, my picker was always picking people who were unavailable emotionally. And when I did the work, I knew how to pick someone who was emotionally available. And I became emotionally available. And so to me, the program is that bar, that expect the best and get it. To me, I believe we're all wired for relationships, and we've all suffered with relationships. But to me, this is a program of hope and solutions and promises. And in those promises, I think we all have that ahead of us in our path to say, you know what? I don't need a partner. I deserve a partner. And so many times, just in conclusion, so many times we do black and white thinking. So we don't want to be codependent. But, on the other hand, can I really love someone so deeply and they love me and not feel like it's a codependent thing, that it's actually a partnership? And so I've learned that I have a loving partner and that I am a loving partner. And as important as we are to each other, it's healthy. And what a life that is. What a life that is for this little boy who came into the world with an open heart, and at 4 years old was already a romantic, and yet found now a partner who, like a puzzle piece, the things I bring, she loves so much, and they're so easy for me because I've been refined most of my life. And so what she wants and needs and hopes for, I do what because I want to, because it's natural. And she does that for me. And so how did all that happen? I don't know. But what I'm saying is, I know it happened because of the work. I know it happened because I believe when I prayed, my loving Father said, I've got some special person for you. And she also prayed. And He brought a special person for her. So I just wanted to share that part. I know it's only a short talk, but I just wanted to bring that possibility to everyone, that we do have the capacity to love. We are lovable, and no matter what's happened to us, our loving Father, our God, will help us find what we deserve and what we can have in our lives. So thank you so much for this honor. Thank you for being my family of choice.